All right, and we're back for another Monday Fun Day. We're talking about prepositional phrases versus infinitive phrases. And now would be the time that you could wipe that look off of your face, whether it is pure bliss that we're about to discuss grammar, or pure boredom, or pure disgust. All right, so why you should care about grammar. This is just a funny little picture I found. Good grammar is like personal hygiene. You can ignore it if you want, but don't be surprised when people draw their conclusions. True story. Yeah, in life, you can't get around it. People will judge you based upon your ability to write and speak effectively. So, just a reminder about why this is all important in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so what is a phrase? We've already talked about clauses. Phrases are similar but different. A phrase is a group of words that acts as a single part of speech, for example, like an adjective, and the phrase does not contain both a subject and a verb. Remember, that's the difference between a phrase and a clause. A clause does contain a subject and a verb, and a phrase does not. And a phrase is a fragment of a sentence, so it cannot express an idea on its own. It cannot be complete. So some examples are after midnight, on the roof, and with a Ukrainian bullfighter. Random, I know. Okay, so Felicity stared is an example of a complete sentence. We could add a phrase to it for some added detail. Surprised by the intensity of her disgust, Felicity stared. Another one, surprised by the intensity of her disgust, Felicity stared at the cockroach. That sentence has two phrases. And surprised by the intensity of her disgust, Felicity stared at the cockroach scurrying across her omelet. Now, the only example of a prepositional phrase in this one is at the cockroach, and the other types of phrases we will be talking about later on this semester. Okay, so prepositions. Most prepositions are difficult to define. Some examples are of, in, off, by, through, between, etc. And then you see some examples of that leprechaun who is behind, in front of, above the ball, under, next to, on those objects, and between, in, and near different objects. Now, I'm going to say the same thing that I told you for linking verbs and subordinating conjunctions, which you probably don't want to hear. The only way you're going to be able to identify prepositional phrases is to figure out what your prepositions are. The best way to do that is to memorize them. Okay, so most of the time prepositions indicate a location, but not always. So here's some examples. An alien on the stove tells where he was. A troll behind the stove. A troll in front of the refrigerator, and a ghost behind the lamp. So prepositional phrases function as adjectives or adverbs in a sentence. And remember, adjectives describe nouns or pronouns, and adverbs describe verbs or adjectives or other adverbs. So there is a formula for a prepositional phrase. It's very easy. It's simply a preposition plus any optional modifiers or descriptive words plus a noun or a pronoun, which is called the object of the preposition. So an example, the prepositional phrase is over the rainbow. Over is a preposition, the article is a modifier, and then rainbow is the noun, which is the object of the preposition. Okay, and here's a bunch of examples of prepositional phrases. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I will point out that the words in blue are the prepositions, the words after the prepositions are the modifiers, and the objects of the preposition. So prepositional phrases usually end with a noun or a pronoun, like I said, which is called the object of the preposition. So here you have 6 different examples of prepositional phrases. The words in blue, after, inside, outside, between, beside, with, are prepositions, and the words in purple that are underlined are the objects of the preposition. Fight, ear, house, girls, you, me. They're all nouns. And then the words that are in teal on the first 4 are modifier words for the noun. A prepositional phrase can open up a sentence, in which case it would be considered a transitional phrase. So you would put a comma after it, just like when a dependent clause starts a sentence. You put a comma after it. Without help, comma, Janie made this message for Santa. Notice the comma offsets the prepositional phrase. Also, I think that Janie might have misspelled Santa. Just saying. Okay, so another thought, is this prepositional phrase working as an adjective or an adverb? Well, it's describing how she made the message. She made it without help. So since it's describing made, which is the verb, it's functioning as an adverb. And what is the object of the preposition? Help. The noun help. A prepositional phrase can close a sentence. For example, we ate corn dogs and drank root beer floats after the baseball game. So after the baseball game is the prepositional phrase. Notice, just like with a dependent clause, when the dependent clause is in the middle or the end of the sentence, you don't need a comma before it. Same thing with a prepositional phrase. Is this prepositional phrase working as an adjective or an adverb? Well, it tells us when we drank the root beer floats. So if it's telling us when we drank, which is the verb, it's describing a verb, so it is, again, functioning as an adverb in the sentence. And what's the object of the preposition? If you are thinking game, you are correct. A prepositional phrase can split the main subject and verb as well. For example, all the puppies, except those that had been trained, pooped everywhere. Oh no. Again, if it's in the middle of the sentence like this and it's extra information, then it would be set off by commas. And notice too that if you were to take out any prepositional phrase, what you have left would be a sentence that still makes sense. So all the puppies pooped everywhere that would make sense as the independent clause. And then you have a phrase stuck in there in the middle for added information. So is this prepositional phrase working as an adjective or an adverb? Well, this one is describing the puppies, and puppies is a noun, so this is working as an adjective. And what is the object of the preposition? Well, except those that had been trained. There's a lot of extra information in there, but those would be the object of the preposition. That had been trained is actually a dependent clause describing those. Okay, so what is an infinitive? Switching gears, and there is a reason that we talk about infinitives and prepositional phrases together, and we'll get to that. Okay, so an infinitive formula is to followed by a verb. To run, to jump, to lift, to smile. An infinitive looks like a verb, but it is not functioning as a verb in the sentence. It's part of a phrase. So it can function as a noun, an adjective, or an adverb. And if it's functioning as a noun, then either it's the subject of the sentence, the direct object of the sentence, or predicate nominative of the sentence. Good thing we already talked about complements. So wait just 1 minute. An infinitive phrase equals to plus a verb, but it never functions as the verb in a sentence. Never, ever, 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 ever. Okay, so it can function as the subject of the sentence, the predicate nominative, which is the noun or pronoun that follows a linking verb, if you remember, the direct object of the sentence, which is the noun or pronoun that follows an action verb and answers the question what, an adjective, which follows and describes a noun or pronoun and it answers what or which, or an adverb, following and describing a verb, adjective, or adverb, and it answers why. So we're going to go into some examples. Okay, so rule number 1 of an infinitive phrase is as a noun. So to leave the party would be rude. Would be is the main verb. To leave the party is the subject of the sentence. No one wants to stay. So no one is the subject. Wants is the verb. One wants what? To stay. It follows an action verb and it answers the question what, so it's a direct object here. Her goal is to win. Goal is a noun. Is a linking verb. Goal is what? To win. It follows a linking verb, so it is the predicate nominative in this sentence. All right, so rule number 2 of an infinitive phrase is that an infinitive phrase can function as an adjective. For example, Samuel White is the candidate to watch this election. In this sentence, to watch is describing the candidate, which is a noun, and adjectives describe nouns. So this is working as an adjective. To watch gives more information about the candidate. And kind of what I already indirectly said, a big hint that it's working as an adjective here is that the adjective comes just after the noun that it modifies, candidate. Okay, and rule number 3 is an infinitive can work as an adverb in a sentence. So we have the sentence, we came to cheer. Now remember, an infinitive phrase working as an adverb will say why someone or something did something. So why did we come, which is a verb? We came to cheer. So to cheer is an infinitive as an adverb. To cheer gives more information about the verb. Yippee! Adverbs describe verbs. Okay, so what is an infinitive phrase? An infinitive phrase begins with the infinitive. It starts with to plus a verb. At its basic form, the infinitive is to followed by a verb. To run, to like, to kiss, to kill, to study. But an infinitive phrase is the to plus the verb and then all of its modifiers as well, any descriptive words that come with it. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between infinitive phrases and prepositional phrases. The reason I like to teach these together is because people commonly get them confused, okay? Because some prepositional phrases can begin with the word to, not all, but some of them can, and all infinitive phrases begin with the word to. So remember that an infinitive phrase is to followed by a verb, and a prepositional phrase is to followed by a noun or a pronoun. Okay, so in this sentence, I wanted to walk to the beach. We have two to's, to walk and to the beach. So to walk is to followed by a verb. So that would be an infinitive. But to the beach is to plus the article the plus the noun beach. So that's a prepositional phrase. And there is one rule you need to be aware of in terms of writing with infinitives. And this is another funny picture. I don't judge people based on race, creed, color, or gender. I judge people based on spelling, grammar, punctuation, and sentence structure. So this split infinitive rule applies to sentence structure. Okay, split infinitives occur when additional words are included between to and the verb in an infinitive, and that's a no-no. It's not formal writing. So, for example, I like to, on a nice day, walk in the woods. That's not formal, it's not acceptable, so instead you would say, on a nice day, I like to walk in the woods, so that you're not splitting your infinitive. Another example, I needed to quickly gather my personal possessions, and that's an informal way of speaking, and it's not as grossly incorrect as the first example. It's not quite as awkward, but it's still not formal. So in formal writing, you would want to write, I needed to gather my personal possessions quickly. You can still use those words in the sentence. They just can't go between the word to and the verb in an infinitive or infinitive phrase. And that's it for prepositions and infinitives, and we'll be working on these more in class. So I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Monday Fun Day.